The NLP Meta Model was initially developed as an attempt to figure out what great psychotherapists were doing when they were successfully helping any sort of client. However, when I met Bandler during a seminar in 2017, he told us at the end of the seminar, when learning a new model, don't start by where the teachers were trying to figure it out, start by where they finally figured it out. What he meant by that is, back in the day, the field of psychotherapy, how it was portrayed, how it was viewed by the majority, had no end. It was supposed to be long sessions over years and years and years, and at some point maybe the client will get some catharsis. Obviously the therapists they had been modeling didn't share that worldview at all, but it was the main way of thinking that was surrounding the field of psychotherapy back then. So it is one of the reasons why so many beginners are stuck with the meta model and think it is way too complex to be used in a real conversation, because there is no clear moment where you know you have done enough, you have said enough things, you know what is the best thing to say next. There is not really any indication in the original model to figure that out. As a small example, he told us, if you hear a phrase like "I am worried" from your client, you might challenge the unspecified information, worried about what, or you might challenge the unspecified verb, how do you get yourself worried? And he said, if you challenge the person on the missing information, you will get into a rabbit hole of complaints and self-blaming and victim mindset, whereas if you challenge right off the bat, how do you get yourself worried, you are leading to a resolution much faster. But the mental process to figure out what is the best line to say next was not really that clear in the initial meta model. And the limiting statement can always be reframed and challenged in dozens of ways. So how do you choose the best way depending on the person you are communicating with? I would say we could identify three main rules to develop a better acuity in using the meta model. The first one is that the context is everything in determining the best reply or the best answer. So by the context we mean who specifically is that person you are interacting with, what is the context of the conversation, because it might be a therapy session, but it can also be in the street, it can be with somebody who might be violent. Many criteria can alter the decision when deciding how to challenge that person's statement. Next, we can identify that if you always speak as if the client or the subject was going to resolve all their issues anyway, and you take a soft and gentle tone of voice because deep down you know, or you pretend you know, they will resolve their issues anyway, it is leading to a positive solution more easily, because many therapists are worried that it doesn't work, and their worries are being transparent or sometimes being projected on the way their choice of words, their choice of decisions, the way they are indicating to their client you should do this or that. It is sometimes altered by their own worries about what if I don't succeed. So it is about speaking as if you were going to a resolution anyway and you had the conviction the client will get better anyway. And finally, as a slight counter fact to this last rule, yes, speak as if they were going to resolve everything anyway, and avoid presupposing a solution that seems easy for you is easy for someone else. Maybe something has been resolved extremely easily in your life because you had this talent or you had this skill or whatever, but for somebody else who is not you, that may not be that easy. So when people get irritated with the meta model being challenged, it is usually because the speaker or the therapist or the coach is presupposing the solution can be done super fast, super easily. That's where many clients get triggered about, do you even have an idea of how my life is difficult? And maybe it is, maybe it is not, we don't care. The point is, if you irritate them, none of the meta model challenges will be really efficient. Now, let me show you a breakdown of a small conversation I had recently with a client, and I have changed several phrases to make it more simple to follow here. But basically, it was a person who had a background in the medical field, had been working as a researcher into a laboratory, and that person had to quit because of a toxic environment at work and because it was during the pandemic, a lot of built-up stress was happening, many different reasons. Basically, that person had a burnout and had to quit, and now is getting back into looking for a job. However, she passed 30 years old and she was worried that maybe no one would want to hire her after such a gap in her resume. So we are going to see what was my mental process to define one step at a time what is the best challenge with each phrase she was saying. When I started questioning about that project, she said, I don't want to risk being rejected by applying to more jobs, because we were talking about the strategies and the actions that she had put in place to hope to find a new job, a new career or something. And she said, I don't want to risk being rejected. Here, my first challenge was who might reject you. Since I knew there were many conflicts and toxic people at her last job, I just had the intuition to clarify first the people instead of challenging the capacities. Of course, you can handle it. You have more skills than you think. I thought it was better to dig into the main problem, which was the initial reason why she quit initially, which were the conflicts and the toxic environment at her last job. To which she replied something like, last time I'm at my job, there was this girl, for example, among many other things that she mentioned, who always engaged me into conflicts and then complaining about me to the boss. And she gave many details about that, about procedures that were supposed to be a mutual agreement, and it was not because of some conflict, whatever. Many stories, and basically I challenged with, do you think this will happen again if you get into a new job? Because when I hear that this thing alone would be the sole reason for not applying for more jobs, for not knocking out on more doors for people who might hire you, I think it is relevant to challenge, what is your evidence that this will happen exactly the same way again than it happened the last time? And she replied a bit confused with, no, but I mean, what if I send my resume and they just ignore it because they are looking for someone younger than me? I'm not supposed to start again at the bottom with my skills. So some self-worthiness issues. And that was not even the exact answer to my question, which is normal and is completely natural. When you start touching on a deep, vulnerable, wounded emotion or negative experiences, people will often unveil more stuff than what you have asked for, or they will answer aside the question you have been asking. This is an indication they are trying to protect something unconsciously. There is some vulnerable things inside them, they don't want to show it, or they have been wounded and they try to pull you away from the real tangible, the really important question to protect something somehow. So here I challenged the complex equivalence, or you might call that a cause and effect. Open to debate if a statement is more a cause and effect or a complex equivalence. Anyway, for the NLP nerds like me, how do you know your gap, like the years you have spent not working, makes you appear less competent? Because here the implied presupposition is, because I haven't been working for several years, I will be seen as not competent if I really try to get hired. And she replied, how could they want to hire someone my age when there are younger people with the same degree, the same skill set, that they could hire for less? Because with her experience, she was supposed to get hired at a pretty good salary right off the bat, and she was worried that it was not going to happen anyway. And I heard right here a judgment not about other people, not from society. I heard a judgment from herself to herself. Again, based on the context, based on all the things that she had said from the beginning of the session, I noticed a lot of self-worthiness issues. So to me, there was mainly a self-negative judgment more than somebody betrayed me or somebody else hurt me. Probably those things have played a part, but to me it was mainly about what does she thinks of herself, much more than any other judgments around. So a judgment is usually challenged by asking who is judging and how is it being judged, which I translated in a kind of chunking up, saying, so you don't see yourself as more worthy than your degree. Chunking up means exaggerating here. Of course, I knew she didn't mean that, but exaggerating is meant to trigger some response, to allow the potentially repressed emotion to come out. And here there was a silence. She muted for a few seconds and she paused to reflect. She wondered, what could be the best reply, because it seemed like I had unveiled all the limitations. At least she had unveiled most of the package of bullshit that her conscious mind had built on top of the real problem, which was about self-worthiness, I don't deserve that, guilt, all of those nasty issues. And here there was a silence, and I knew once you have a deep confusion, or once you enter a blank, so the person doesn't know anymore what to reply, they have like a computer glitch, there you can build up. You can start building up resources from there. If you try to build up resources of courage, determination, motivation too early, that will most likely be ignored by their conscious mind, because their conscious mind still believes they are not worthy or a piece of shit or whatever. They will probably dismiss it. Once you have unveiled and confused enough the limitation, then you can build up resources about motivation, about courage, about more confidence, whatever you want to build up. So I asked, which life experiences, and more specifically work experiences, did you have that makes you more valuable, that could make you at least more valuable in the eyes of an interviewer or somebody who could hire you than any other random newbie who has the same degree, at least on paper. Maybe somebody else on paper has the same qualifications, but what makes you stand out from the crowd? What makes you different? What makes you more than all the other people who might apply for the same job? Which experiences did you have at work? Which specific challenges did you overcome during that job period last time, even if it was really nasty and negative and toxic? Despite that, which experiences that you can talk about to an interviewer did you have that definitely makes you stand out because you have accomplished more important things? And she started to describe some. Of course, obviously, she had made great improvements in the laboratory. She had conducted great projects under a massive amount of stress. And I explained to her, this is what an interviewer needs to hear from you. No one will care that you have that you have the degree, that you're certified in this. No one cares. This is what society says you should care about. But what the human behind, the one person who is interviewing you, what the human behind is seeing and hearing is how that person is different from the 10 or 15 other candidates I have for the job. How is that person different? And you differentiate yourself through real life experiences, not through what is written on a piece of paper. And I followed up with a story from a friend of mine that was used as a metaphor, but it's actually a true story of a friend of mine who had been crazy with applying for jobs, and basically he landed something that was supposedly impossible for his age and position in life. And that was just a story aimed at building up more confidence about, yes, I can. And even if I am not the perfect best person, yes, I can at least have more boldness to apply for more jobs and more quality jobs instead of just lowering myself into a shitty thing I don't want to stay in at all. So now comes the very important question: how do you practice? Because it is always fun to hear about what a master can do once the mastery is there, but how do you build up and develop that level of mastery? My best advice, and the way I practice basically, is from the book. You take the book NLP workbook, I think, or no, Introducing NLP. I just have it right here. Introducing NLP, or like you might find more recent versions than this one. Basically, in this book, chapter 5, I think, if I am not mistaken, there is all the meta model patterns explained thoroughly. Words and meanings. This is the chapter. And you have all of them one by one. I would suggest to pick one per day or one every 3 days. And during 3 days, for example, you pay attention during all of your conversations, either through text or through Zoom or face-to-face, into all of your conversations, how many times do you spot this pattern? If it is about unspecified nouns, then clarify how many times do you hear people mentioning a source that is not specified. People say. People who, specifically. Or when they say, I heard bad news this morning and now I am pissed off. which bad news specifically, you don't need to challenge them all the time out loud, but at least pay attention for where you could challenge them in their during the conversation, in their dialogue. You pick one pattern like this, so unspecified nouns, then the next day or the next week you go for judgments, then you go for cause and effect, and you just notice one step at a time all of those patterns one by one, up to the point where it becomes automatic to spot them at the moment people say them. If it is too difficult to do it in a real conversation, you can also listen to an interview or even read an interview. This is the one I did personally a big part of the time. You read an interview of a singer, an actor, whoever you like reading about, and you read their interview and notice how many of their words are unspecified, unclear, or how many cause and effect and complex equivalencies can you find. Ultimately, if you just want to cut through the chase and go toward the most fulfilling and most beneficial challenge you can use from all those patterns, look specifically for where do they use a cause and effect that is maintaining them into a victim position. Whenever you want to use the meta model to help people improve in life, that is definitely the main, I would say, criteria, the main factor to pay attention to and to challenge. It is which cause and effect or complex equivalencies do they make, and you can refer yourself to the book to figure out what specifically a complex equivalence is if you don't know. And you notice which complex equivalencies do they use to maintain themselves mentally into a victim position, into a defenseless victim position, and you challenge that specifically. Again, with a soft tone of voice, with a soft behavior. It's not about brutalizing or attacking them. It is about presupposing implicitly that they will change and they will resolve that situation anyway, with or without your help anyway. From that behavior, then you challenge all those cause and effect of, oh, I am shit because that, I can't change because people hate me. Those things you challenge. How do you know that? How can this mean that? And there you just slowly but surely, like I showed in this example, get to the core of the belief, of the expectation, the negative expectation they have about themselves or about their life. Once they are confused, once they have a blank and they're like, I don't know, or they take a few seconds to reflect because they are not sure anymore what to reply, then you can build up more resources by using anchoring, by using submodalities, whatever you want. You just build up more resources once their mind is open enough to receive them, first of all, and to apply them next. If you want to discover more about neuro-linguistic programming and how it works and how you can use it yourself, you have two documents down below in the description. One of them is on Sleight of Mouth, which is like the more evolved version of the meta model. It is incorporating all the meta model understandings and filling it with many more ways to reframe a statement or a limiting belief. And you have a document about the fundamentals of NLP with anchoring, with building up more confidence, with my philosophical take on it too, and some explanations about how to help somebody change during any coaching session.